Oh yeah, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. We are right on time. No, this is exactly when I wanted to arrive, okay? Right now. This is the perfect time for me to go live, all right? Why? Because it's right now, and you're here and I'm here and my guest is here. I might as well just bring her right on cuz I'm excited for this conversation. I know a lot of you guys are excited. I mentioned that you were going to be joining me last week, and people started freaking out. Christina, welcome to the show.
Aw, thank you. That's so good to hear. Wow. I'm
Yeah,
flattered.
yeah. People, I've
Very
been
cool.
trying to do more interviews, and I miss talking to people, right, and seeing
Yeah.
different perspectives and just seeing what they're up to in life. And I saw your trailer, the first trailer that you put out, and I was like, this. I want to talk to this person because you seem to have connected to a lot of the families, the guys that were in this situation, and I really I reached out and I'm grateful that you're here. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, everyone, if you don't know who she is, Christina is a journalist, and you are doing a documentary about I put it in quotes like the attempted kidnapping and murder plot of Gretchen Whitmer. And I've talked about this many times on my show for those who have been watching me for as long as you have. This was back in 2020, actually, and when it happened, I kind of knew it was BS. And wow, when it came out, then it was the FBI and it was like mostly just FBI agents. I was like, that's crazy. And I haven't really thought about it. I kind of was like, I'm glad that's been exposed. But from what I've like watching your trailer, it's like no one's come to justice for this, right? It's like these guys. I don't want to get ahead of it. I want to let's just start from the beginning. Um,
Mhm.
what what led you to even? Do you live in Michigan? Are you or yeah? No. Yeah, she's in Michigan. It's Michigan, right? Yeah. So you don't live in
I,
Michigan.
I don't live in Michigan. I live in Northern Virginia.
Okay, not even close. But so what
Not
led you to
even
even
close.
getting into, covering this in the first place?
Well, I have been like an independent journalist for a while, not a filmmaker before until this documentary. But I was a journalist and I had a small YouTube channel, and I kind of like to focus on government corruption, but also what I thought were underreported stories. So at the time all of this was going on, I had just spent a bunch of time researching like this group called the Order of Nine Angles and like the FBI's um, activities there, shall we say. Like we
Hmm.
learned that that organization, at least the American chapter of it, was run by a longtime FBI informant who'd been an informant since 2003. And we learned that the FBI was funding their publishing house to like the tune of $200,000 as they were publishing this satanic literature that was encouraging mass cullings, as they
Wow.
said. And so I was looking at that, looking at it and thinking this is kind of like Gladio. It's kind of like COINTELPRO. It's like PatCon. And then I had started researching PatCon. For people who don't know what that is, if you're familiar with COINTELPRO, the FBI operation from like the 60s to infiltrate like left wing groups, anti war groups, what have you. Those led to prosecution. So we learned about COINTELPRO. It's well known, well documented. PatCon was a similar FBI operation that stands for Patriot Conspiracy to infiltrate right wing groups, militia groups, what they called like Christian identity groups. And it didn't really lead to the prosecutions that the COINTELPRO stuff did. So we didn't even learn about the existence of PatCon until 2007. And so it is alleged that certain incidents are part of PatCon, things like Ruby Ridge, Waco, Oklahoma City. I'd been researching Oklahoma City at the time that the Whitmer thing happened. So
Yeah.
when they announced the arrests of them, my mind immediately went to like PatCon, and I was like, oh, there's got to be more to the story here.
Oh yeah.
And
So
so
you
that
saw
kind
it.
of,
You had an inside view of many different instances that you were already researching. So it was clear as day to you then. I see.
yeah, it
Okay.
was very fortuitous, shall we say, that that happened when it happened. and that it just happened to catch my interest. And so I started covering the case as it went through like the discovery process. So to give a quick rundown of like what these guys were charged with for people who may not be familiar, it's a very complex, convoluted story. I'm going to try to break it down as simply as possible. Okay. 14 men were arrested. 6 were charged federally with conspiracy to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. 8 men were charged at the state level for providing material support, gang affiliation, and felony firearm. So to kind of explain those charges, the providing material support, they're saying that they provided material support to like the FBI's plot in the form of, quote, personnel, or like you taught somebody how to tie a tourniquet. That can be material support. Gang affiliation, they said any group of people that is five or more people with similar beliefs and ideals is now can be considered a gang. So those are the gang charges. And then the felony firearm, they just slap on you that that's from the material support, apparently because they were legally carrying their firearms when they committed the felony, which was, I guess, this vague material support. So that's apparently an automatic like 2 years, and it's an automatic felony firearms charge. So that's their charges. And then some of the guys who were charged federally, I believe 3 of them, they added a superseding indictment with charges for WMDs. So this is like, these are crazy charges. So they were looking at a long time in prison, right? Yeah. That was how this was announced, how it was presented. And then of course the timing of it was very suspicious as well. We're actually, this week is the 4-year anniversary of their arrest. They were all arrested October 7th of 2020. Here we are 4 years later, and I want to stress that 5 men are currently incarcerated still, despite the fact that we all know that this is a hoax. 2 of them are in Florence Supermax, where El Chapo is, and like hardened criminals. And these are like, Barry's a middle-aged truck driver, father of 4. He has no business being there. Adam Fox had no criminal record. He has no business being there. And this is the other thing, like, for people, I'm sure everybody understands, if you're going to become a criminal, you don't start off like with a plot to kidnap the governor. Like you kind of start with maybe like petty theft, or like there would be an escalation of like criminal behavior, you would think. Like how many regular people just get together one day and decide, hey, let's kidnap a sitting governor? Like this does not happen in the real world. Just
do you think that's something? Do you think that that's something that they were trying to set a precedent? Like, look, these are guys pushed to the edge by Trumpism and MAGA, because they've been trying to anything that they can to try to push that message of like these guys are extremists, and look, just the everyday American, the truck driver, can snap, and because of Trump's rhetoric, this is obviously BS that the left is making up, because they don't have anything, right? Because it's the left that's really the violent ones, the peaceful protesters, of from the summer of love. You think that's what was part of it?
Definitely was part of it. I think there was a number of things, a variety of factors that played into this. I would suggest that the FBI has been doing stuff like this for a long time. It didn't start with the Whitmer case. They're just one of many people. The post 9/11, they've been, manufacturing fake Islamic terror plots. We just had the guy that was arrested for election threats that came into the country, that was working for the CIA in Afghanistan.
Thanks,
hello.
Right.
Isn't that interesting? So, and then of course he was communicating with FBI informants. This is the comical nature of like what I mean by every single one of their big cases. Every time you start pulling on threads, it always leads right back to them. So I think on the part of the FBI, they've had a long-standing mission post 9/11 to expand their powers, take away more of our rights. The FBI does not have to have probable cause to investigate you like regular law enforcement does. They can open an intelligence assessment on you based on nothing, like, oh, we received an anonymous tip, so we had to look into it. When you look at the documents themselves of like why they said they opened investigations on people like Brandon Caserta, and you read it, it's literally all like First Amendment protected activity. Like, he said these things, he had these opinions, so we're going to open an investigation on him.
Yep.
It's just crazy to me that they can do this stuff. So I think the FBI needs to justify their continued existence, their expansion, the expansion of their budget. We know
Yep.
they just got the approval for their massive new headquarters in Greenbelt, Maryland. That's going to be twice the size of the Pentagon. So clearly they're planning
Wow.
on substantially expanding the FBI themselves, that we already know is basically the American KGB. So they need to
Yep.
justify their existence. They also have financial and professional incentives at the individual agent level. So agents themselves, like when they get these
Really?
big cases, they get promoted. Yes, and they also get bonuses and things of this nature. And then we have in this case, we had Special Agent Jason Chambers, who was looking to capitalize on his FBI training and skills. He was going to be leaving the FBI. He started a private intelligence company called Exa Intel. By the way, they're still operating on Twitter, Exa Intel operatives. Just do a search Exa Intel. You'll find numerous accounts of these people. So he created this private intelligence and cybersecurity firm. Incidentally enough, it was talking about having foreknowledge of the Michigan case. It was tweeting about it through an account called Ravaging on Twitter. So they have, and then we have emails of him talking about to other agents in the FBI how he was reallocating resources to get his private company off the ground so that his transition to the private sector would be relatively painless. And so they take the skills that they,
Wow.
quote, learned at the FBI, they parlay this into creating private companies. CrowdStrike is a good example of that, also ran by a former FBI. And then they make these companies, and then they get government contracts. So while Jason Chambers opens this case as a terrorism enterprise investigation, he had no right to open a TEI when they began the investigation, which is crazy. And so they knew right from the beginning they wanted a terrorist enterprise investigation. They wanted there to be a DT case. I think for Whitmer herself, she was being severely questioned about her unconstitutional lockdowns. She, don't forget, had put COVID patients into nursing homes, and thousands of people died. A lot of people were upset about that. So this kind of rehabilitated her image. And also they arrested these guys 1 month before the election. This was their October surprise. The Joe Biden campaign and Kamala Harris campaign used it to go after Trump. Biden compared the guys to ISIS. They brought up Trump's tweets where he said, liberate Michigan and a couple other states to see, oh, look, he radicalized these people. These guys were like libertarians. They weren't even Trump supporters. Some of them didn't like Trump at all. So it's just a silly narrative. So I think there was a variety of reasons why this happened, and numerous parties that wanted this to happen. And I would also say that it was bigger than Michigan. They actually wanted this to be a multi-state plot.
Wow. Okay. Well, I remember she was involved with a March 25th order that Cuomo put those sick people in, and thousands of people lost their lives because of it. The old people. I mean, Wolf was a part of it. Whitmer, I think a few other, Pritzker. There's, all the blue states essentially had that same kind of, they had to pump the numbers to up the fear. So that makes sense that she needed some way to distract. I mean, that's case in point. I mean, look at Diddy. I mean, I know that Diddy probably did all the stuff and it's really bad. But the day after Trump nearly got assassinated again, they needed, that there's we need to change the media. We need to, change what everyone's looking at. And it's so obvious. In fact, when in 2020, I was in Arizona to vote, and 2 FBI agents showed up to my house asking me about a social media post. And I'm like,
what? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they were like,
wow.
And it was such a stupid post. I said, I'm being held up no show tonight. I'm being held up at a gun store. And I made a joke.
Wow.
And I'm being held up. It's not if they, why would they show up to my house? Wouldn't it have been clearly it was a joke and it didn't matter. I think what they were trying to do was to find out, because I had flown from where I was at the Cass Castle in Maryland, and it turned out that I was still registered to vote in Arizona, and I hadn't fully moved. So I think they were trying to get me on election fraud and to make me
Probably.
and make an example out of me. That like, oh, Trump supporters trying to cheat in the election, voter fraud, voted twice, or I don't know, whatever they were trying to spin. But I was lucky because I was actually packing a moving truck. They literally walked up to me while I was like moving a heavy couch like into my moving truck, and they were like, I was like, what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, we're just here. We're here to question you about, this social media post. And I was like, okay. And I'm like helping my wife move stuff, and they're like, oh, what's this? I'm like, I'm moving. And as soon as I said that, they didn't care. They didn't even ask me if I bought a gun. They were talking about this event in Phoenix that they were worried that I was going to go to or something. And I'm like,
what? Oh, that's so suspicious.
Yeah. And I'm like, they didn't even ask me if I bought a gun. That's the crazy part. I feel like if they were actually worried about me shooting up some crazy, I don't know. It was very obvious to me that they were fishing, and I didn't give them anything, and they left. But I'm like, holy shit, like the FBI is clearly just out for, the only thing I wish is I didn't get their card. The first thing I should have been like, can I get your card?
Yeah,
who are you guys? Like, yeah, in hindsight, right? Obviously.
Exactly.
But I was fresh in 2020. I was still I was just becoming political and learning the landscape and understanding like how much that they can screw you over completely, right?
Yeah,
and
you didn't realize that this was like the Soviet states.
Yeah,
Now
basically.
you know.
I know. I feel very lucky. So now I'm, I see your documentary that's coming out, and I'm very impressed by what I'm seeing. You're saying this is your first documentary. It looks very professional. It looks
thank
really,
you so much.
really good quality. I'm assuming you have a team that you're working with.
We have a small team, by the way. There's literally 3 of us. So
awesome. So 2 others and you.
Shout out to my cinematographer and my editor. They're both
awesome.
Amazing and fantastic.
It shows. Yeah, it really does feel fantastic. So can I play the trailer?
Yes, please do. I would love that.
Okay, let's
proud of it.
You should be. It's fantastic. What is, I'm on the website. This is just like the trailer here, right? Let me pull up the website.
And you can just cut it off after, like when it goes to the end part and it shows K&K Film, it then cuts to my plea for funding. We don't have to play that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I got you. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, let's play this, and you guys have to see. If you haven't seen this, you're about to, actually. So it's quite good, and you'll see what I mean. I have to just I'm boomering it right now. Apologies.
Oh no worries. I'm literal boomer with technology.
Okay, boom. There it is. Okay. All right, here. Let's watch the trailer.
And we go now to new developments in the plot to kidnap and kill Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
13 suspects arrested, including 7 alleged members of a right-wing militia group
who are preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me.
The defense claims the FBI, through undercover agents and informants, were behind the plan, and that Fox and Croft were duped into going along with it.
What the FBI did is unconscionable.
It's almost like they had their evidence, had their facts, and created the crime.
Let's get a plan together to attack our governors all at the same time.
We can cloud the water. We can send everybody into disarray and chaos.
He's the perfect chameleon. He knew exactly what to say, how to say it.
Dan Chappell was the driving force of it all.
He was there to lead. He was there to orchestrate.
I think he viewed us as an opportunity.
Everything here is a lie or a manipulation.
It's almost impossible to fathom how brazen, how bold, and how dangerous these individuals were.
Thank you to the fearless FBI agents.
Inside, the takedown of the FBI agent who led one of the nation's biggest domestic terror investigations.
If you can think of a synonym for patriots, think of terrorists.
you're seeing the exact same methodology being used without difference.
Everything about this case was a terrorism attack, I agree, by the FBI.
Unlimited power, unlimited money. My biggest fear is being, called a terrorist from the nation that I love.
Your entire life could be taken away from you for something you didn't do.
What they've done is destroying lives.
And I will not stop until he's free or I die.
Woo! A saying we have in my office is don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
So good.
I have to explain that quote at the end. I know people may not know or may not put together. That is an FBI agent.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's Agent Impola. You hear him earlier in the trailer where he talks about we can throw everybody into chaos and disarray. He's talking about, I shit you not, in an interrogation with him and his own informant, like the FBI's pedo informant that they used in this case. They're interrogating him because they're going to force him to sign an NDA, and they're also raiding his house as they're doing the interrogation. Unbeknownst to him, he finds out towards the end. But in there, they're talking about how they want to keep him off the stand and not testifying. And so they're saying, we can throw everyone into chaos. Talking about throwing the defense into chaos by we're not going to, we're going to keep your name out of this. They won't know it's you. We're going to have him looking everywhere. And, it's just insane to hear an agent saying this. And then in that interrogation, he gives that line. He says, a saying we have in my office is don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, right? And you're like listening to this thinking, this is insane. Throughout, it was a 5-hour long interrogation. 3 hours have been made public thanks to an incredible journalist who works for The Intercept who obtained that. And I'm grateful that he put it out the 3 hours for it. You can just listen to it. And it's amazing to hear the agent say things like, we have the power and we know we have the power. And, they're talking about literally how he entrapped these guys and how, when the defense hears this, or if they hear this, that's going to look like an awful lot like entrapment. It's just crazy.
It's like, how are these guys still in prison then? You said there's still 5 men that are still in prison. 3 are in like a hard slammer. How I don't understand. Like, how are they still in jail?
Well, because we have show trials now. We don't actually have real trials. And I know everybody, this is the thing that I think makes America even worse than like Soviet Russia, because at least everybody knew that they were living under like tyranny.
Right.
They knew what the KGB was. They knew it was the secret police, the political police. They knew that there were show trials and that they weren't real. In America, we have this illusion of like freedom and democracy, but it's not real. We ostensibly have these things, but if you get on the wrong side of the government, none of the things that you think you have, like due process, freedom of speech, freedom of association, none of those things are real. You do not have those things. You're guilty until proven innocent, and you have the full force of the federal government coming upon you with a court system that works with the government. And the other thing about this, I talked about the FBI being financially incentivized to do this. The informants themselves were financially incentivized. They were getting paid in envelopes of cash. As you see from the transcripts there, from the documents in the trailer, one of them is paid $54,000 in cash. He actually gets a Chase Bank card where he can go withdraw funds. And I'm just thinking, how is the FBI maintaining these Chase Bank accounts? How much money do they have allocated for informants? It's very disturbing and very dark. So that's how 5 of them are still in prison. They weren't allowed to introduce exculpatory evidence. They couldn't call any witnesses to testify on their behalf because many people don't know there's 20 unindicted co-conspirators. So these are people who were eyewitnesses, people that were maybe attended a meeting, attended a field training exercise. And so the government says, well, you are under investigation. You're an unindicted co-conspirator. And if you testify, you might say something incriminating, in which case you could face, federal conspiracy charges. So it was a way of intimidating people and witness tampering. And they did all of this outside the presence of the jury. So like they were allowed to one by one threaten these witnesses, and the judge kept the jury out for this. So they didn't even know that they had people showing up that wanted to testify for them. And then of course, They also lie, they fabricate, they manipulate evidence, they plant evidence on people if they need to. They literally admitted to it in this case, which I thought was stunning. And then nothing happens. Nothing happens to any of these people. None of these agents have been admonished. I also want to state that no crime was committed throughout the entire course of this investigation. Nobody actually did anything violent. Nobody committed a crime, except, of course, for FBI agent Richard Trask, who signed off on the criminal complaint and was going to be the government's star witness. He, of course, beat his wife and strangled her after attending a swingers party in Kalamazoo. He just spent the night in jail and was suspended from the FBI. This is somebody who, tried to murder their wife. And of course, yeah, that's the only violent person associated with the case.
How could people help? How could people help? Is this it?
That's a good question.
I mean, is that it right there? Like, I just
funding the film helps, and I'll tell you why. Because right now it's not like you can give these guys commissary and that they'll get it. They've been confiscating funds that are put in their commissary, or they drain the commissary. Or you can, and that gives them some items, but like they don't really have a lot of hope in the court system for their appeals. They're hoping that if we get the documentary out, that's actually them being able to tell their story. Because one of the other things that happens in this case is that these men were all working class men. Adam Fox, the guy who was framed as the ringleader, was literally homeless at the time. So we're talking like indigent. He's not like they have the ability to get their own attorneys, although some of them did. They were lucky. But the government basically handpicks your court-appointed public defender. And so I think there's something to be said about the fact that the three of the guys who were acquitted had private lawyers who took a different strategy than these court-appointed lawyers. So I would argue that some of these court-appointed public defenders walk these men into these lengthy sentences. I think also that many of these cases don't even go to trial. The FBI does this stuff, and then when they arrest people, they hit them with tons of charges, even ones they know aren't going to stick, just as a scare tactic, right? So that you think that you're facing like literally life in prison, and then they tell you, well, your court-appointed public defender will tell you, well, the government has like a 98% conviction rate, and there's all these things, so we can get a deal, and we'll have you do a plea deal, and then we'll take down, if we do that, they'll take off these ridiculous charges that shouldn't be on there anyway. And that's how this system works. That is how the court system works. Many of these judges were former prosecutors themselves, so they're deferential too, and they defer to the government, which you would think they wouldn't be doing, because the government is the powerful party in this situation. If you're going to defer to anybody, it should be the weaker party, the party that doesn't have all of the unlimited resources on their side. But that's not how this works. They give the government the benefit of the doubt. The government, they pretend, is legitimate and real, and that these prosecutors are searching for crime and doing the right thing. No, they're all about making careers and names for themselves, and they don't care how many innocent people they have to put in prison, how many lives they have to destroy in order to do so. So basically, the best way to support the guys is to just support the documentary, help us share it. That's something you can do for free. Just share the link on social media, share the trailer, because I think, a big barrier to us getting funding is just so many people don't know about us and don't know the work that we're doing.
Yeah, don't know this story. I mean, I knew about this, right? But I didn't know how many people were actually arrested, how many people were actually in the system, according to this, and those court-appointed lawyers, they probably have their own Chase debit cards that are connected to the FBI somehow, being told, make sure they take that plea deal, make sure that they, face this and know that we're going to drop the hammer on them if they don't, to really instill that fear, right? Because, if he's homeless, he can't afford anything but to acquiesce to this court-appointed, who you think is on your side. Right? At least that's what it's supposed to be.
Good advice, right?
Right. It's the only person you have. Like, what choice do you have? It's not like he can represent himself. I mean, you can, I guess, but
I wouldn't recommend it. It's very hard, very difficult to do.
Right.
I know there's a J6er, Will Pope, who's representing himself, and he's been doing a fantastic job. But like, I wouldn't recommend anybody else do it like he's been doing it, but
Yeah.
you really like, please get yourself a lawyer. They purposely make the legal system incredibly obtuse, complex, overburdensome. There's so many stupid laws that are erroneous and irrelevant, and then they just stay on the books. The entire thing is like a big scam, and all of these people's jobs is reliant upon the system keeping just more people funneling through the system. That's what these judges do, these court-appointed lawyers. They all know these prosecutors, by the way, and district attorneys. They all go to school together. The legal community is small. They know each other. They have professional relationships. You know, many of these lawyers, they argue before judges before. So they know each other. What I mean is it's sort of like an insular community, the legal community, depending where you're at. But that's usually where it is everywhere. I mean, I worked as a paralegal. I saw from the inside what it was. You know, I thought it was going to be like Law and Order and CSI when I was a kid. I thought, you know, working in law would be great. And then you realize like, oh no, actually, this is all a scam, and it's all a scheme to make money. It's all about money. That's what family law is about, destroying families and making money and keeping the court-appointed psychiatrists and guardians ad litem involved. And it's just really, really sad. And so I kind of want to give some background on like this story here and tell people the real story of like what really happened. I don't want to give too much away. Obviously, I want people to have a reason to watch the documentary.
Watch the movie, yeah.
Exactly. So like I'm going to go through some of this stuff and like just know that what you're hearing is not the worst of it. Like it's actually worse than this.
Wow.
So just to give some background of like, well, when did this case begin? The government claims it began in March of 2020. That we learned was a lie. The Wolverine Watchmen group that they claim was a militia group was like a Facebook page that was created in November of 2019 by a young man named Joe Morrison, who worked as a chimney sweep and was a Marine reservist. He was in his 20s. He has a wife, 2 kids. Pete Musico is his father-in-law. He also worked with him as like a chimney sweep. So like, again, working class guys. They created this prepping group because they saw the things that were happening in our country, and they live out in the country in like Jackson County, Michigan. So it's a very rural area. So it would take like for law enforcement or like an ambulance to come to your house, it may take them 30 minutes to an hour to get there. So if something happens, like you have to have some skills. You have to have some medical skills, or you need to be able to defend your home and your property, because if God forbid somebody tries to break in, it's an hour before the cops are showing up. So these guys, their idea was like, hey, let's get a group of people together from our area where we can kind of train. And, you know, maybe one guy's good with firearms, maybe another person has medical training, and we can kind of like teach each other the skills that we have, sort of like a fellowship type thing.
Or a well-regulated militia, if you will.
Well, it wasn't even really like a militia. It was just like, hey, let's get together. We're kind of prepping, and then they would drink in their backyard and like shoot their guns at the targets that they put up in their backyard. Like they were shooting at like pots and pans and stuff. I'm not making it up. This was by no means like a real tactical militia or
no, it's just, you know, the guys in the neighborhood just getting together.
Yeah. So they create this, Joe creates his Facebook page, and it's a private Facebook page, has maybe like 15 people. He's just trying to make friends online on Facebook. And there's like a community he's part of, which is like the Pro 2A community. And so that's where this is. And then March of 2020, the FBI's informant, Dan Chappell, will infiltrate and take over the Wolverine Watchmen. Now, the story that is given is a lie. I will flat out say it. Dan Chappell says he became an informant because he joined this private Facebook page, which he claims the Facebook algorithm recommended to him. Also a lie. And like a comically stupid one at that. So he's trying to maintain his perishable tactical training skills by looking to join this group. And you're thinking, well, wait a second. Dan Chappell's an Iraq war veteran. He was a fire support specialist. He's somebody who spent like 70 days behind enemy lines in Iraq. And he was part of the team that helped rescue Chris Kyle, the sniper and hero and whatnot.
Right.
So this is somebody who talked about his time in Sadr City, and like he comes off as like an operator, right? He actually is somebody who has, if you spent 70 days behind enemy lines, you got to be tough, right? So this is like who they send in to like infiltrate this group, and it's how are they going to help him maintain his perishable tactical training skills? By the way, Dan also was a firearms instructor after he got out of the military. So it's all like a lie and cover story. He claims that after he joined the Facebook page, he was directed to their encrypted group chat. And that when he got into the group chat, he saw, quote, threats of violence against law enforcement that he didn't think to document. Didn't take a screenshot of this. Then he goes to his friend, Detective Ramirez, who happens to be, of course, Michigan State Police and on the Violent Gang Task Force, has an FBI supervisor. Oh, gee, I just randomly came across this group and saw these threats. Let's not document them, though. So within a week, he becomes an informant. And it's stunning to me that if he showed these threats to Detective Ramirez and this warranted the FBI making this man an informant, why didn't Detective Ramirez think to take a picture of his phone, of Dan Chappell's phone inside this encrypted chat? But it's even worse than that. They testified that the FBI had Dan Chappell's login credentials. So at any point, he could have just given them the login and they could have documented it. So it doesn't exist because it's not real. These threats didn't exist. They said that they wanted to do reverse red flags on law enforcement. And there's just no evidence to suggest that was the case. They said, they wanted to download this Onyx hunting app because it was going to show them the addresses of public officials or something of this kind. And it's like, well, can anybody just go download the app? Yes. Can anybody just like look up these addresses? Like, are they publicly available online? Yes. Okay, so having this app is not evidence of anything. It's literally a hunting app.
Right.
Why would they need this if they wanted to target law enforcement to do reverse red flags, whatever that means, right? I guess so. It just is kind of like silly that's the pretext for why they claim they needed to investigate these guys who were not breaking the law. Even the FBI admits nothing they had done was illegal. But it was these threats that they needed to investigate. And like I said, the FBI does not have to have probable cause to like investigate you. They can open an assessment if they receive an anonymous tip. They say they have to investigate it. It is not the same for like local law enforcement. I can't just go tell like Fairfax County Police, hey, my neighbor said something naughty. I think they want to do something. And that they can't just like go knock on their door, like open an investigation. There would have to be probable cause to open an investigation and to do this. But the FBI, they operate like outside of the Constitution. And I think that that's terrifying that they've been allowed to do that post 9/11.
Agreed.
It's scary. That should scare everybody. So basically, this group, not really a militia, Dan Chappell infiltrates the group under these pretext of, there's these threats against law enforcement officers. And funny enough, nobody suggests once Dan is there and he's wearing a wire, none of these guys talk about, hey, let's go do a reverse red flag. Like there's no audio of them talking about wanting to do this. There's no evidence of them planning it. So we know that this is just a lie. In any case, 2 months after infiltrating the group, Dan Chappell becomes the XO, the executive officer of the Wolverine Watchmen. Joe, of course, is the leader, quote unquote, of the Wolverine Watchmen. But when you look at the meetings that were called throughout the course of the investigation, the field training exercises that were put on, Joe isn't there for most of these events. So how is he the leader? Dan Chappell is there and he's bringing the Wolverine Watchmen with him. And they are basically, they view him as a leader. So the FBI says like their informants don't take leadership positions. They basically do. He just said, I'm the second in command and not the leader. But then everybody knew and understood and agreed that he was the leader. He's the de facto leader of the group. Okay, so they...
Just not on
I want to also make clear that, like, so there's a variety of people that are like brought together, that they don't really know each other. Some of these guys maybe know each other online, like on Facebook, like they may be Facebook friends, but you know how it is on social media. You may follow somebody. That doesn't mean you know them or like you're friends with them or you've ever met them in person. So if these guys had any contact with each other prior to the FBI getting involved, it's like, I may have known you on Facebook, or I may have interacted with one of your posts, but it was really, that's it. So they have their informant, Steve Robeson, the pedo informant. He becomes an informant in October of 2019. So actually a month before the Wolverine Watchman is even created, and well before this investigation officially begins in March of 2020. Now,
so wait,
Robeson,
hold on. So wait, he was in that area and he was an informant and he was friends with, I heard a lot of names, so I don't remember exactly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. But so what was he informing on, right? This guy that became an informant in October of 2019.
So to separate out who we just talked about, Dan Chappell, the Iraq War veteran who becomes the XO of the Wolverine Watchman. Now he is in Michigan.
He's an informant, right?
And he's an informant. He infiltrates this group on the pretext of they were talking about wanting to target law enforcement. Now Steve Robeson is not from Michigan. He's in Wisconsin. He is the pedo informant that is the one of the key architects. Him and Dan Chappell, these are the two main informants, although the FBI used actually a network of 12 informants, 2 undercover agents, several OCEs, what they call online covert employees. These two are the main informants though, right? So Steve Robeson is in Wisconsin, and he gets on the FBI's radar through something called Operation Bronze Griffin. Now, the cover story for him becoming an informant is that he was in a 3%ers group and heard, quote, threats of violence against law enforcement. So the same cover story that Dan Chappell has for why he infiltrated the Wolverine Watchman and why he becomes an informant is the same story for why Steve Robeson becomes an informant. And again, these initial threats are not documented for Robeson. Zero proof.
No proof of any of that?
No. And actually,
surprise, shocker.
We know now from the FBI's documents that have come out that Robeson was flagged on social media via something called Operation Bronze Griffin, run by big tech companies, where they were taking people that mentioned certain keywords, and then they were putting those individuals in a database and giving this information to the FBI without the FBI even getting a warrant, right? This is social media companies volunteering this information and putting American citizens in a database based on keywords and speech. And then the FBI is giving access to this database to their informants of these are people to target online. So this is concerning. It should be concerning to everybody who's listening. You could be in this database and you could have been approached by an FBI online covert employee, an OCE, unbeknownst to you. And so Robeson he's flagged on Operation Bronze Griffin. He becomes an informant using this cover story. And since he's already in a group called the Patriot 3%ers that he's kind of created and is running, the FBI kind of use that in, and he starts talking to people like he befriends Barry Croft online. Barry Croft is the trucker, the middle-aged trucker and father from Bear, Delaware. He's not from Michigan. The FBI will call him a ringleader in this case and the spiritual leader of their fake plot, which is also stunning. So Robeson's making contact with Barry, again, before the investigation begins. In January of 2020, he's befriending Barry, pretending to be a friend of Barry's who had passed away. Oh, I know Casey Massey. I'm one of his friends. We should hang out. We should get together, right? So this is pretty crazy. And they had other informants, Jenny Plunk. She was posing as the head of a Tennessee chapter of a fake militia group. And so she befriends Barry again before the investigation even begins. They befriend Barry. So the FBI claims they had numerous threat streams merged together. No, they stitched together various people from various states and called meetings and training exercises to bring these people together. Now, I'm going to run through sort of like the timeline and try to bring the pieces together for people. Number one, they wanted it to be a multi-state plot. They had sort of targets in like 15 different states across the Midwest. And the FBI's plan here was for there to be a like multiple governors being kidnapped all at the same time, or they were going to bust people in different states that were going to be carrying out like a coordinated attack, essentially. Could you imagine? I'm sorry, but think back to 2020 and what was happening with the lockdowns, with the summer of love, you know, the cities burning and stuff. Could you imagine if something like this happened? Oh, like news of like, oh, these militia groups, they were organizing, they were talking, they were getting together, and they were planning this multi-state attack. They were going to hit this all at the same time. That is just crazy to think of. But like, why would the FBI want that to happen? None of these guys came together on their own.
No, I legitimately have an answer. I feel like they were so afraid of Trump getting back into power that they were pulling all the stops. They were having every single contingency plan take action, right? They had like whether or not COVID was a plot, I think it was to throw everything into chaos, to inject the paper ballot systems, to change the laws last minute so that they could do that and manipulate the system. I think that they needed every single thing that they could possibly use to spin the news, right? This was foiled, but it didn't need to be because they didn't need it kind of vibe, right? They cheated in 2020. I'm saying I've gotten enough strikes on my channel. I mean, you're allowed to say it now anyway, and YouTube suddenly made it okay to say that. But
yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, of course. Now that another election's coming, and yeah, and I worry about something like that happening this time. I mean, it's October. We're under a month away, you know, and who knows what's going to happen. And man, I feel like this whole plot is light compared to what they could be capable of doing when you really know how sick and evil that they and the length at what they're willing to do, right, to get what they want done.
Yeah, exactly. It's so dark and it's so disturbing, and so many people don't know the real story here. And then even people on our side that have followed it and have reported on like the publicly available information, they don't have the full story. If you haven't interviewed the eyewitnesses, if you haven't talked to if you haven't talked to the people who attended these FTXs, who were there, or the guys themselves, their family members, like you're missing major context. And so this is essentially like what the FBI is trying to do during the summer of 2020. So they orchestrate like a series of events. There were organic. So let's go back to March and April of 2020. During this time, people are angry about the lockdowns. Whitmer has made it so that you can't even buy seeds. You can't cut hair.
Yeah.
Oh, but liquor stores are open. Marijuana dispensaries are open. So that, you know, it's just insane. And like people couldn't work. Some of these guys were private contractors. There was something specifically saying they couldn't work and earn money to support and feed their families. So what are they supposed to do? They're home all day. And then you've got liquor stores and marijuana dispensaries open, and there's nothing to do. So there are these organic anti-lockdown pro-2A rallies that are set up. There's one April 15th of 2020. The guys attend. They attend another one April 30th of 2020 called, I believe, the American Patriot Rally. This was put on by not these men, right? Like they didn't organize this event. They just showed up. Now, their informant, Dan Chappell, is leading the group there. He's with the so-called leader, Joe Morrison, but you can tell that Joe is following Dan's lead. So Dan takes some of the Wolverine Watchmen to this event. Now, they show up, of course, armed. They're in what's called like a full kit. So they have their plate carriers and their vests on, their firearms, and like they have masks on. That was actually for COVID, by the way, not just to conceal like their identity or anything like that. And so the FBI, they believe that not only were these guys armed, but they believe Pete Musico had a live grenade on him. And so they're operating a mobile command center I kid you not. And
Wow.
like they're monitoring all of this in real time. They contact the Lansing Capitol Police and tell them, stand down, open the doors, and let everybody in. So if you believe these guys are dangerous, armed, and you think one of them has a live grenade, you want to let them into the Capitol?
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, they did that. And these guys stood in line for an hour. They went through COVID screening. They got their temperatures checked. There was no storming, okay, of the Capitol. And also,
Does sound
legally,
familiar, though. Just gonna
but
say.
doesn't this sound familiar of like the police
really
opening
does.
the doors, waving
It really
people
sounds
in,
familiar.
taking
I feel-
selfies with them?
It's almost like it was like a test run of something
For a
that would
certain
happen.
event.
That would happen later on in the year, well, the following year. But wow, yeah,
Right? It's really weird. And again, like they had their multiple agents like in this mobile command center. They're listening to Dan. He's wearing a live wire so they can listen in real time to everything that's being said. You know, and Dan says, oh, well, I thought the guys were getting ready to do something. And that's why, you know, the FBI said to, stand down, open the doors and let everyone in. Well, what did you think they were going to do, first of all? And why would letting them in make that better or like help that situation?
And if he was wearing a wire, wouldn't he have on tape
Where's the
things
audio?
that they were saying that they were going to do something, right?
Exactly. Right. Well, just like they had this this officer testify that Pete Musico got in her face and like made these threats to kill her and other law enforcement, and she had her body cam turned off at the time, her partner standing behind her. He testified he didn't hear any of this. So it's like really convenient how these things happen and we just have to take certain people's words for it. And it just is very, I mean, it's crazy that they orchestrated this situation. And the goal here, I believe, on the part of the FBI was, look, we're trying to build up a militia group and we're trying to make a multi-state plot. So we need to get this militia group national attention, national press coverage. And lo and behold, what happens the next day? There's the picture of them. You see it in the trailer of them lined up inside the state capitol building in their full kit and stuff. That was taken by the media who ran with this narrative that right-wing militia groups stormed the Capitol and that they, you know, there's video of them inside the Capitol. They were protesting. Yes, they were shouting in the face of law enforcement, but nobody did anything violent. They literally
That's not illegal.
Followed. Nothing they did was illegal. Adam Fox shows up. Now, Adam Fox, at this point, he's not a member of the Wolverine Watchmen. He's not from Jackson County. He lives in the basement of the Vac Shack in Grand Rapids. So these people don't know each other. They're not connected. They're not part of the same group. Adam had been in the Michigan Home Guard, but he got kicked out because of an incident with his girlfriend. So he attends this American Patriot rally with his girlfriend, Amanda Keller. And there's video of them shouting in the face of the law enforcement. And I think that it's at this point that Adam got on the FBI's radar. And we still don't even know how the FBI initially makes contact with him, how Dan Chappell reaches out to him. But we think it was at this event that they came into contact. And so if we'll move forward. So this is their overseeing the first storming of the Capitol, what we believe is the dry run for January 6th. I should also note that the special agent in charge of the Detroit field office, while this was all happening, is a man named Stephen D'Antuono. Now, 1 week after these men are arrested, they're arrested October 7, 2020. He is promoted October 13th to be the assistant director of the Washington, D.C. field office. And that's a special title. So think about this, too. Just to talk about D'Antuono for a minute, you know, he's had this long career with the FBI. He's the SAC of the Detroit field office. He's actually warned by a U.S. attorney for the Western District of Michigan about one of the agents in this case a month before the investigation begins, where they're saying, hey, this guy needs to be investigated for perjury. He committed perjury in another case. That also was sent to Stuart Platt, the assistant director of the FBI. 1 month later, this guy's made a lead agent on the Whitmer case. How interesting. But so anyways, D'Antuono ostensibly ignored that recommendation from a U.S. attorney. I find that to be interesting. You know, ultimately, he would be responsible. Then he oversees what happens on January 6th, another eerie situation that involves
Same guy.
we now know undercover. Yeah, we now had undercover FBI informants, undercover MPD, DHS. We know CIA had bomb sniffing dogs that day. So
and they weren't even coordinating all those different field offices, 3-letter agencies that all had people on the ground on January 6th. They weren't even communicating. They didn't have like communicate between the different agencies, so they weren't even sure who was who on January 6th. They could have been like antagonizing each other to go in, and we don't know because it's not public who was actually. I mean, I forget who was on the stand in one of the congressional hearings. I think it was Christopher Wray. And he was like, I can't say whether or not we had people. And it's just like, of course you did.
Inspector General Horowitz, he just said the report is delayed until after, of course, the election that will tell us, maybe how many informants were there that day, which we know there was many.
Yeah.
So that's Dan Tuono. And also, so if you get promoted to be the assistant director of the DC field office, that's kind of a big deal. That's a special title. You're moving from Detroit, Michigan it's a big promotion for this guy, right? Yeah. You'd think he'd stay there. He participates in the raid on Mar-a-Lago. Then he leaves the FBI and becomes a, quote, whistleblower, but only about the Mar-a-Lago raid, which I think is a CYA move of like, I just thought that was a brush too far. It's like, sir, you oversaw what happened on the day of infamy in January, and you oversaw what happened in the Fednapping hoax, please, sir. And then he leaves the FBI like right after that, after he'd just been promoted, and he's now a consultant at KPMG. So like they all do. Isn't that funny?
Well, you said it earlier. I agree with that. You said it earlier about you were talking about just the judicial system, but also the police force. It's this small circle of guys, of humans. They all work together. They all talk to each other. They're all conniving and manipulating. And I don't know how many of those people are just hearing from the higher ups and think it's true, and are like think these guys are actually this militia that has ill intent, right? Who knows, right? But obviously they didn't, right? If you take a step back, so there's clearly people that are trying to push and pull the strings, however high up they are on the hierarchy of this racket of control, because that's really what it boils down to: money and control over the country. So, wow, I mean, holy cow! It just keeps getting deeper and more connective. I was just going to talk about the January 6th connection, but you basically were just like, oh no, it goes way further than January 6th. It's all the way the Mar-a-Lago raid. I honestly forgot about that, and I forgot that even just thinking about that, like the judge had to recuse himself, but it was the same judge that was that Trump was. Who was he going? He was suing people on a RICO case. He was trying to get them on a RICO case like 7 months prior. It was like the Clintons. There was a bunch of big names, and they were telling Trump to drop the case, and he didn't. And 2 days later, Mar-a-Lago got raided, and it was that same judge. So I don't remember the judge's name. It was a year ago. I don't know. It's been a long time, and I didn't really focus on it, but. Now I want to look for a little closer, though. If this guy was overseeing Mar-a-Lago, it's like, wow, they're all working together to try to, what I think, ensure Trump will not be president again. Because why are they pushing it beyond till after the election? Because they hope that Trump doesn't win. Because if Trump does win, of course Trump's going to be like, all right, let's open all the books. Let's open all this shit. All right, January 6th. Let's see who was really who. He has nothing to lose. He's got 4 years and that's it. So what is he going to do? He even said this in an interview. He's done so many. I don't remember who he was talking to, but he was saying, I didn't know what I was doing before. I wasn't in politics. I became president and I was told who to trust. And I learned that none of them were trustworthy. Everybody was snakes, and everyone was a snake, essentially. So now he's learned who he can trust and who was loyal to him and who was actually America first. Some could argue that he's not America first 100%, but he learned who he could trust. So now he's going to go back in, fire a bunch of people, not even caring. I think they are desperately afraid of him, which makes me worry for the next couple of weeks for election day until January 20th.
If they
I am worried.
If they were going to do this in 2020, like go to this extent, I think that that's deeply concerning because, why wouldn't they do it now? Like you can tell by the way
they tried to kill him twice.
Yeah, and I think they believe if he gets in, they will be charged for the crimes that they've committed. So they are trying to offset their own, I would say final accountability for their crimes, but they are trying to project and frame of like, oh, Trump's going to go after his political enemies. And it's like, well, no, actually, he was in office for 4 years. He didn't go after Hillary Clinton. He did the opposite. She should have faced charges for the crimes she committed. Everybody knows what
100%.
happened, and it's all a farce and disgusting. Nobody was held accountable for Spygate. So like, no, he's not going to do anything that you think he's going to do. But even if he did, like, it's justified because you guys are committing crimes. You are the criminals that you say everybody else is. Like in this case, the co-conspirators is the FBI, the Department of Justice, the Michigan State Police, the Michigan Attorney General's Office, Gretchen Whitmer and her team. They are the co-conspirators who engaged in a joint venture conspiracy to deprive American citizens of their rights. That's the conspiracy here. And the only people who plotted to kidnap and kill anybody was, in fact, the FBI, and they wanted it to be multiple governors, not just Whitmer. She gets too much focus on this. That's something that bothers me. She's trying to spin this now as that, like, there was an attempted assassination on her. She literally, because of what happened to Trump, is saying, well, I didn't get enough attention when they tried to assassinate me. Nobody tried to assassinate her. Nobody even attempted to kidnap her. She's used words like, oh, I want to speak to my kidnappers. You weren't kidnapped. Nobody even tried to kidnap you. And in fact, you yourself were part of the conspiracy against these men.
Do we have a connection? Like she was involved? We know that for a fact?
Yes. She actually picked so let me lay the groundwork for this.
I know it's in your documentary, so you can maintain some mystery. I'm just so
publicly put this out there. I don't mind telling this.
Yeah.
Again, worse stuff in the documentary than this, but
sure.
So she picks the date and time of the recon of her vacation cottage. Like she picked a date and time convenient for her, and the FBI admitted, they testified and admitted under oath that they picked the date and time and they planned the first recon. And they actually did the second one too. They just didn't admit to it. But so I'll back up and explain how that happened. So let's go back. This group is not really a militia group. They're just a prepping group, loosely affiliated people in Michigan. The FBI gets involved. They become, the leader of the group. The FBI starts training these men in more tactical training. The FBI says, hey, let's have meetings. And remember that the lockdowns are still happening. Riots are happening across the country. So people's minds in that time, they're concerned about a civil war or something like that. These guys legitimately thought if Trump won the election, there could be a civil war, or if Biden won, there could be a civil conflict. So they were they were very concerned about that. And they also were concerned about these riots were happening in Michigan. There was riots in Grand Rapids. So they were concerned about, hey, we want to make sure we have the skills to protect our family because nobody's coming to help us. Barry is a truck driver. He actually saw what was happening in Seattle because he was driving trucks for Amazon, and he saw people getting pulled out of their trucks and beaten by a mob. And so he had this sense of urgency that I need to be able to protect myself and my family, but also their community. These were the guys who, if a riot came to your neighborhood, they were the men that were going to get together and stand between you and looters and you and the government. Also, by the way,
men
they were concerned that the government may try to forcibly vaccinate people. They were going to be the people that would stand between you and a forced vaccine. So you see why the government needed to get rid of these guys?
100%.
They were not trying to do anything violent. Like, the whole purpose of them having meetings and having discussions was to talk about the state of the country, to look around and say, nobody's coming to help us. Even law enforcement says we're not going to respond, you know, if there's something happening, like in these riots. Like, they actually let police precincts go and be burned to the ground,
crazy.
rather than to defend.
And occupied. They got occupied. I remember that.
Right. So these guys were thinking like, hey, let's create a group of people who can kind of assemble, you know, not like a quick reaction force. That's what the government calls it, and their words for it. But in their minds, they're just saying, hey, let's have a group of people that if you know, you can call in a moment's notice, and these guys will show up to like help protect people, not hurt people. At these meetings, they were looking at legal ways that they could go after Whitmer. They were trying to contact a constitutional sheriff because they were thinking maybe they can actually do a valid arrest on her. And the FBI, you know, Adam Fox had a sheriff who called him back and wanted to talk to him about it and meet with him to discuss it. And the FBI informant says, oh, no, don't meet with him. That's going to be a setup.
Of course.
So, don't do the legal route. No, that's going to be a setup. Let's talk about crazy talk in the basement when you're stoned, like while we record you. And so let's fast forward to June of 2020. Barry, who lives in Delaware, somehow gets pulled into this through Steve Robeson. And then you've got Adam, who was not part of the Wolverine Watchmen. He gets sucked into this. The FBI calls and chairs what they call a national attack planning meeting in Columbus, Ohio, at a hotel called the Drury Inn. This is June 6th of 2020. It's a month after George Floyd. So this is, riots are still happening, and it's very bad across the country, and people are concerned. So the FBI calls a national militia meeting. They claim Barry Croft called and shared this meeting because, remember, they say Adam and Barry are the ringleaders here. So far, has any of this been Adam or Barry doing anything? No. It's the FBI's pedo informant who calls and shares the meeting at the Drury Inn. And there's four informants there, all wearing recording devices. And then everybody else that's present is targets that the FBI has in these multiple states where they're trying to get this multiple attacks, you know, going, this multi-state plot off the ground. So they have like their informant is smoking weed with people out in the parking lot outside the hotel, saying things like, they're in your backyard, give them no quarter. Because that night there was a riot happening in Columbus, Ohio. And also the informants were trying to get these guys to go armed into a riot. Oh, let's go see, you know, let's go check out what's happening, or, you know, we have to give them no quarter, as Steve Robeson said. This is the inflammatory talk, though, and they're riling them up. They're saying, like, they're here, they're going to destroy the city, nobody's going to do anything about it. And then they get them back upstairs where they can hear them better and record them better after they've gotten everybody riled up, after they've lowered their inhibitions through alcohol and marijuana. Then the informants pose hypothetical questions to them, like, hypothetically speaking, when would it be okay to use violence? Or what would you do in a civil war scenario, or like a shit hits the fan scenario? And of course, Barry, he's emotional, he's worked up. He goes on this extended rant where he talks about
under the influence. Sorry.
And he's under the influence. He's emotional, and like, he's seeing his country being devastated and destroyed. He went off and ranted and said something like, I might yeet a cop, put on his uniform, and yeet a Fed. So this is like, he's not really going to do this. He also talked about wanting to, you know, drive Secret Service details off the road in his truck, and a bunch of crazy talk that, like, he's just emotional. He's reacting to the moment. He's asked like these hypotheticals, and he blurts out this statement.
All the FBI agents are just like sitting in the van listening with just like raging hard-ons. They're like, we got him, guys.
Great. Yeah, this is great.
Of course.
Barry, by the way, just a good background on Barry. Barry is a great guy, very sweet. He's a father. He's got 4 daughters, 3 young daughters he was raising by himself before the FBI did this.
Wow.
From him. So he's
is he in jail right now?
yeah, he's sitting in Florence Supermax. He could be in there for the next 19 and a half years. His communications are completely cut off from, everybody. And so, but this is like the setup of, they take that little clip of him at this meeting and play it out of context to make it sound like this is somehow these guys planning this like multi-state operation. Now, they have one of the guys at the Dublin meeting was a gentleman from Virginia, from my state, a disabled Vietnam veteran who was in his 60s, late 60s, a man named Frank Butler. And the FBI was trying to get him to do a plot to kidnap and kill Ralph Northam. Now, they say in their text messages, the handling agent, Jason Chambers, says to the informant, Big Dan, mission is to kill the governor specifically. Like, he's telling him what the mission is. And that's not even talking about Whitmer. That was talking about Ralph Northam. Mission is, so they, again, multi-state plot. They offered the FBI offers the use of an explosives laden drone for a plot to assault the North Carolina vacation home of Ralph Northam. They tried to get Frank Butler to make homemade explosives. The FBI sent him the ingredients to make it with like household items like Drano and sugar. And then the informant, Big Dan, told him to double the ingredients. Now, Frank Butler says that Dan Chappell and Steve Robeson, the two main informants, were basically like brainwashing him during this time. And thank God he didn't try to make the HMEs, or he could have taken out his entire block. Like, this is the game the FBI plays with people's lives. They have endangered his entire neighborhood with this stunt that they wanted to do, but to them it was more important to try to orchestrate this hoax. Now, I want to explain too. So they have this national attack planning meeting. A month later, the FBI puts on a field training exercise. This is the kind of training that militia groups do all the time. I want to stress that. It is defensive firearms training. They have a medical training booth, so you learn how to like tie a tourniquet. Or these are good skills, really, that, I mean, everybody should have, and that people pay thousands of dollars to get this training, to get the firearms training, to get the medical training, to know what to do in an emergency situation. These are just good skills to have, and they're something that people will pay money to learn. So the FBI is putting on FTXs and offering this training for free to people who are in the middle of a lockdown, have nowhere to go, and then the FBI is like, oh, you don't have a ride to get there? Hey, we'll come pick you up, and we'll pay for your hotel, and we'll buy you the food. This is, and for people listening, if anybody ever offers you these things, that should be a red flag. But I want to say that the relationships they'd cultivated for months before, so it didn't seem suspicious to them. They thought it was their friend helping them out, and they didn't know. And I also say that the FBI, they can turn people against you. Like, your own family member can become an informant against you. They can literally just approach them and offer them money, or if they have a grudge against you, like the one son of the Oath Keeper who turned his father in, and then did a GoFundMe and got a show for doing this and turning his dad in the way that he did. That's like, they can literally just approach people in your life to become an informant against you. So you may have no way of knowing and seeing the red flag. And I think that that's deeply disturbing, because I remember reading about the East German Stasi at the height of of East Germany. They had like, what was it? 1/3 of the population was informing on the other 2/3. It was a very high number where the Stasi had cultivated so many informants, and it was typically your friends and family who were informing against you.
Mao, communist China too,
Yeah.
All getting the kids. Yep.
In America, though, right now, today, this isn't, communist China 50 years ago. This is happening now. And the FBI has something called the Sensitive Informant Program. We learned about this through the FOIA litigation of a man named Jesse Trentadue, whose brother Kenneth Trentadue was murdered and, associated with the OKC case, right? So he'd been involved in litigation trying to get information about his brother's death from the government, and he's filed numerous FOIAs. One of them was, we learned about this Sensitive Informant Program the FBI has, where they cultivate informants in places like the news media. So you have a mainstream journalist who could also be moonlighting as a federal informant. Like we know there were informants all the way back in the OKC days that were involved in trying to sell tapes of certain things to the media for money, like very strange things that we've learned. So they can also be in the court. So you could have a judge that could be moonlighting as an FBI informant, or a prosecutor, or a district attorney, or a public defender, or it doesn't matter.
What is OKC? What is that? What are you referring to?
Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma City
Okay,
case.
the bombing. Okay,
yes,
right.
And
yeah, because there was like a second man, right, that no one knows about, that like disappeared, right? He was in the van. I know a little bit about that whole. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so
right.
there was like a sketch
FBI, obviously.
Exactly, or somebody associated with the intelligence community, because it was more than the FBI that was there around those guys around Elohim City. So Kenneth Trentadue, Jesse Trentadue's brother, looked very similar to the sketch of John Doe number 2, and we think that when they arrested him as he was crossing the border from Mexico to come back to the United States, that they mistook him for John Doe number 2, and that's why he was murdered. And so his brother has been trying to get to the bottom of this case, and there's ongoing active litigation in this case that is still active, right? So he's been trying to get answers for 20 years now or more, but he has successfully won some of his FOIA in lawsuits, and so we do know about like the sensitive informant program, and we know that the FBI can have these informants, not just of like regular people or people who are criminals, like anywhere at any level of society. That is also, to me, very disturbing, because it's exactly like the KGB. It is exactly like East Germany, but it's worse because people don't know that this entire system has been created around them. So let's go back to this national attack planning meeting where the FBI is trying to get a multi-state plan off the ground, and they have people they brought from different states together. The next month in July, they put on the joint training FTX, the JTX, so joint FTX, which is held in Wisconsin, not in Michigan. It's put on by the pedo informant Steve Robeson, who is posing as the head of a fake militia group created by the FBI called the Patriot 3 Percenters. And they have the other informants. Some of them are posing as heads of other state chapters of this fake militia group. So the guys from Michigan are invited, and they go. Dan Chappell brings them. So at this FTX, there's like 40 different people there. It's billed as like a family-friendly event. So they have a little girl's birthday party in the front, and kids are swimming in the pool, and they're barbecuing food.
Wow.
And then they have over in the, in this other area, like this is a big private property. They have the defensive firearms training, the medical training. Now, the FBI will claim that these men created a shoot house and that they modeled it after the governor's vacation cottage. This is, in fact, a lie. The materials that were purchased to construct the shoot house were purchased via the FBI informant Steve Robeson's fake charity. So he had created a fake charity called Race to Unite Races, and they were offering these guys $5,000 credit cards because they were trying to get them to make like a large purchase of like firearms or ammunition or something that they could point out and go, see, look, they're stockpiling in there to plan this thing that they want to do. But nobody, they offered these even to the homeless man, and he turned it down. Like, think about that. Somebody who's homeless and sleeping in the basement of a dark, it looks like a dungeon when you go down there. There's no like natural lighting at all. You have to have like a flashlight or it's completely dark. There's like these vacuum parts everywhere. This is where this man's living, and he's turning down these offers of $5,000 prepaid credit cards associated with a fake charity. Oh yeah, you can buy gear, totally cool. They didn't take the bait. So this is the kind of thing that they're doing, but they use those cards to buy the materials, the plywood to make the shoot house. And then the FBI undercover agent Mark Schweers testified at the first federal trial that he helped construct the shoot house. So who was the one that tried to model it after her vacation cottage? You guys constructed it. You bought the materials, and it was not modeled after
course.
her vacation cottage. They made like a little thing, and then they put friendly and non-friendly targets, so smiley face, green targets, and then frowny red ones. So if you were planning to like ambush and kill, you know, a security detail, why would you need to have friendly targets? Like, it doesn't even make sense, because they
Right.
weren't planning, you know, they weren't doing like a mock-up of like a, you know, training to do an assault on the
Right.
governor's cottage. The FBI basically set up an obstacle course and then told the guys to run through it. And then they filmed them while they ran through it, took the footage and said, look, they were running a terrorist training camp and we need to arrest them. They got a video of
Okay.
Barry. He's like 50 years old. You know, Barry, the middle-aged truck driver. He wears this tricorn hat, so he looks like an old pirate. And they have him running and doing the barrel training. He literally could only do the barrel training because his knees were so bad. And then after that, he literally gave them his gun. He leaves it at the property in Wisconsin because he goes, I'm too old for this stuff. He kind of saw himself as more like a morale officer anyways.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that was Barry's thing, was talking, wearing the tricorn hat, telling everybody about the Constitution and the founding fathers. You know, that's like what he would do, because he was a truck
Barry
driver.
sounds
so he
awesome.
would meet people. He's a great guy. I love Barry, and what they've done to him is criminal. Honestly, they've destroyed his mind. Like, he's not this person he was going into this, and
Really
it breaks
sad.
my heart. But he was a good guy, a good father, and like the comical nature of this, the FBI takes this firearm, they drive it through multiple states to try to plant it back on Barry so they can arrest, so that he'll have it when they arrest him.
Wow.
It's just so silly that it goes on this adventure and then they try to plant it back on him. They actually admit
Wait,
to
they did that?
planting- Yeah, they did. They had their informant drive from Wisconsin to Delaware to bring this gun back to Barry. So again, if they thought these guys were dangerous, like, what were they thinking?
Right.
What is going on here? Let's, you know, it's just crazy. And then they admit too that they planted explosives, what they call explosives material, on Barry. So there was this bag, this red bag. It's from a Wisconsin like boat company, so we know this bag doesn't belong to Barry, because who lives in Wisconsin? Oh yeah, the FBI's informant. So in the bag is some BBs, some black powder, some tannerite, and the FBI, this was all stuff you could purchase legally at like sporting goods stores and stuff, and like anyway, so they call this explosives material. Though they admit at the second trial, the retrial of Adam and Barry, that like, oh yeah, we planted that on him so we could seize it later when we arrested him. So they just explain like this stuff away as if it was like, oh yeah, of course we had
it's part of the case. Obviously, we planted it on him
when we arrested him, because, you know,
we didn't have any other evidence, so we had to plant it on him. Of course.
Yeah,
the judge is like,
to these things.
We're good.
Right.
That's
and like a juries who don't know better may hear that though and think, oh, like, do they do this? Is that right? Like, they may not know better. And also so like some of these things were big revelations at the first trial. And that first trial ended in 0 convictions for the government. Daniel Harrison, Brandon Caserta were acquitted. There was a mistrial on Adam and Barry. They were almost acquitted, but they kind of weren't sure. So the government has to do this hasty retrial of Adam and Barry, right? Because they have 8 other guys on providing material support charges that they can't charge them if there is no active terrorist to support, right? So they have to convict some of the federal guys first. So they have to retry Adam and Barry. Then they can get the other guys. So in this hasty retrial, they took all of these revelations that came out at the first trial that were like big explosive things. Oh yeah, we used 12 informants, but of course we had to do that to defend democracy. It's like they just explained and kind of told on themselves to take the wind out of the sails of the defense to break this stuff there. They also, you couldn't introduce exculpatory evidence of like all of the incriminating things that the informants were saying. So maybe on that FTX, right? That was a 2-day weekend. So you've got hours and hours of recordings from multiple informants from this 2-day event. So that's a lot of recording. They'll take things that the guys said that sound bad, where they're saying offensive things, they're making jokes and doing the kinds of male talk,
Yeah,
shall we say.
throwing out.
Trying to
Yeah,
sound
sure.
tough with each other. They're saying things like Adam said he wanted to fly Whitmer over the lake on a kite. So it's not like a plot, but they're saying offensive things. But they'll take those clips and they'll play it in court. But then something that an informant said that was incriminating, where they were pushing for violence, like they were suggesting attacking Whitmer's security detail. Oh, well, if an informant said it, the judge called it hearsay and wouldn't allow it in. It's not hearsay when it's them themselves saying it,
Right.
and they're acting as agents of the government, because they have handling agents who are listening in real time, and in some cases literally telling them word for word what to say. So of course they're acting as an agent of the government, but because they're informants, they say technically, you know, they're not an agent of the government, so it's not the government doing it. And it's like, well, wait a second. You can't just outsource your entrapment to a network of informants and then say, oh, well, they're not acting as agents of the government, so anything they did isn't our fault. No, that's not how it works. But apparently in America, where we have show trials now, I guess that is how it works. Oh, and they also, at that retrial, they introduced time limits only on the defense when it came to cross-examining the men who were coerced into taking.
I never even heard of that before.
It's never happened before. That's why. The only time that this has been utilized was in a case that involved like 100 third-party defendants. It was like a long one of these litigation cases of like a real estate company. It was like a lengthy thing that the trial was projected to go on for like months. So they were trying to limit, you know, since it was such a big thing. But
I guess I can understand that.
In a criminal case, though, and
right.
a trial that was projected to last 2 weeks and went under the projected time, there's no reason to literally only impose it on the defense to cross-examine the key, you know, guys who took plea deals and claimed that this plot happened. And I feel bad for those guys.
Other than to throw a wrench into their whole defense, right? This obvious. It's disgusting. Wow.
Right. And then there were things like for the state guys, they weren't allowed to mention the word entrapment. They couldn't use entrapment as a defense because in Michigan, this is interesting for the state case. This is different than federally. In Michigan, it's not a jury that gets to decide if you can use entrapment as a defense. It's the judge. So Judge Wilson, decided that they couldn't use entrapment as a defense, couldn't say the word entrapment. So how were you supposed to defend yourself if you were entrapped then? But I would say these men weren't even entrapped, because entrapment means you were induced into committing a crime by the government that you were not predisposed to commit. No crime occurred. Nobody committed a crime. They literally just framed these guys and orchestrated a series of events where they could get enough things to make it look like they did something, but nothing happened. So it's just crazy. But so like the government could say convicted terrorists Adam and Barry, and they could even play videos of the guys who were acquitted, Daniel Harris and Brandon Caserta, and they could say that they were part of the plot and all of this. And the defense couldn't say, hey, those two guys that they just played video of, they've been acquitted. So they could say convicted DTs, Adam and Barry, but you couldn't say acquitted innocent men found and trapped, Brandon and Daniel. So that's why the guys in Jackson County at the first state trial, Joe Morrison, Paul Beller, and Pete Musico, that's why they got set up so badly the way that they did. And those guys could be in prison until 2063. And because they're state cases, they can't be pardoned by the president, and they can only appeal up to the Michigan Supreme Court. Michigan is literally like an opposing party and victim in this case. I don't see how they can adjudicate these cases. Whitmer herself is literally the head of the Michigan Department of Corrections.
Oh my gosh.
So
nightmare.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's nightmarish what these people have been through.
Yeah.
Now, after the FBI puts on their field training exercise in July, nothing's happening. In the end of August, they want to wrap this up. They need to arrest these guys. They need to do it before the election, right? So how do we get them to do something when they're not doing anything? You know, they're in different parts of the country. Like, how do we make this a thing? Well, they decide to do a recon of the governor's vacation cottage. Whitmer picks the date and time. The FBI coordinated with her security detail. They're saying to their informant, try to invite this person. You think Brandon will come? You think Dan Harris will go? But all they could get, because everybody was working and busy, they could only get Eric Molitor to go. So Dan Chappell, the informant, drives the vehicle. He has Adam Fox, the homeless man that they call the ringleader, in the passenger seat, and they pick up Eric, who has no idea where they're going. Eric thinks that they're going to like look at where like that they're tracking BLM
Who knows?
people who are coming in from out of town to riot, because he'd worked security with Adam before. Adam had worked security for a U.S. Marshal. So Eric's thinking, oh, because they had been tracking people that were coming in from out of state, staying at hotels, and then going and rioting. So Eric's thinking, he's told, hey, want to go check out a high profile vacation cottage? He goes, oh, like they're adapting their tactics. They're not staying at hotels anymore. They must be renting Airbnbs. So he thinks he's going to like track like people who might be coming in from out of state to like riot. He has no idea that they're going to go up to Whitmer's vacation cottage until he's in the car and they're on their way. And then the informant, Dan, is armed and he's driving the vehicle. So Eric doesn't know him. He doesn't know Adam that well. It's like a weird situation. So that's the daytime recon, but that's not enough because they didn't get enough people in the vehicle to like get enough, again, things that they could try to frame them on. I should also say it's not illegal to get in the car and to drive up by where Whitmer lives. Like, it's not like they went on private property. They literally drove down the street. Anybody can go drive down. Doing that in and of itself isn't illegal. And guess what? I can shoot a video on my cell phone as I drive past. It's not illegal. They claim what made it illegal is that they had intent, they were doing a recognizance. What kind of recognizance? If you're really trying to plan out like an amphibious assault on a vacation property, you just drive down the street and like take a cell phone video. That's your recognizance. Well, it's not very good if that's what it is. What it actually sounds like is a bunch of goofballs who are stoned and giggling and being driven by the FBI, thinking that they're just hanging out with their buddies, bored, and this is what they're going to do because they've got nothing else to do, and why not? And so after that, they go to this tavern. And of course, the FBI informant tells Adam to draw a map of where they just went. He literally hands him the pencil and paper, has him draw it. Then the FBI uses not only the map against him, but they had agents stationed in the bushes outside of this restaurant and sitting in the restaurant at a booth taking pictures of Adam as he's drawing the map. So they have the pictures of him. And it's like, I'm sorry, but like you are literally orchestrating a theatrical production with these guys. It's so sickening, though, that they didn't know that. Like, could you imagine that you have no idea? You think you're hanging out with your friends, but there's agents in the bushes photographing you and the license plate on your vehicle, and like they're listening in on this wire in real time to everything you're saying. The idea that anybody was ever in danger is nonsensical, and it's, contradicted by the actual evidence. But that wasn't enough. So, we need to get more of these guys on something that looks bad. They're not doing anything. There's no plot. We got to get something because we got to wrap them up. So let's have another field training exercise. This one they put on in Luther, Michigan in September of 2020. And they said, we're going to go do land navigation training. That's what these guys thought they were going to do. And this involved 3 vehicles where the FBI was trying to funnel as many people as possible for their final nighttime recon.
Of course.
And so in one of these vehicles, you have FBI informant Dan driving the vehicle, undercover special agent Tim Bates in the front seat, and then you have Adam and Barry in the back seat with another FBI informant with him. So 3 FBI and 2 defendants in one vehicle, more feds than actual guys. Wow. And the feds are the ones driving the vehicles. And they're the ones giving people instructions. We're told the informants weren't aware of each other. They didn't know who each other were. Well, we have we've got the audio of them in these out-of-court statements That's these are all exculpatory statements the defense wanted to introduce. They were not allowed to. We're hoping that this gets in a new trial if their appeals go through. But we have the audio of these informants talking and saying who's going to go in what vehicle. Like the three of them are planning the whole thing. So if they didn't know about each other, why are the three of them saying, hey, we're going to have this person go in that vehicle, take this person with you, you take that guy. And then they're coordinating and they're giving directions. They say Adam Fox was the ringleader. He was giving directions and instructions to people over a walkie-talkie. Well, you had 5 feds in one vehicle all wearing recording devices. Where's the audio of this? Why don't we hear anybody? And if it existed, it'd be blasted all over everywhere. The fact that you haven't heard it is because it doesn't exist. And so the FBI, we have text messages of the agents talking to the informants saying, oh, go up this way. We've got some good low light ambience, because they had installed pole cams at her property in advance, hoping to pick up on video these men in the vehicles doing some kind of recon. Guess what? There's no video from that pole cam that is ever been
surprise,
because they didn't even get close enough to the house to get it on the pole cam. So the FBI actually created a reconstruction video of what it would have looked like, and they were able to play that in court.
They're allowed to play that?
Yeah. Yes, they were allowed to reconstruct of this is what it would have looked like if it would have been picked up properly on the pool.
How is that evidence?
It's not. It's literally them fabricating stuff. And that's what this whole case was from start to finish. And I know there are people, maybe even people listening tonight, who, for whatever reason, thought these guys must have done something for the FBI to want to do
I don't think so.
Them. Or, no, they were not.
My chat's pretty base. I doubt it.
Okay. Well,
no, I think everyone's as blown away as I am. This is wild.
Yeah. These guys were not doing anything. There was no real indication that the people they were associating with were informants. Yes, they said inflammatory things, but I've heard worse talk at bars. Okay. It's just the difference is that you don't have somebody recording everything you're doing for an entire year, and everything you say online and in what you think is a private conversation. If they did, could you imagine? Like, I know I've had some conversations in my own house that I certainly wouldn't want played over and over and over again into infinity.
I mean, everyone gets mad. Everyone has bad days where they say things that they don't actually mean. I mean, I'm just so blown away. But I want to have you finish though, because we're getting close. So this is September. They've finally got them all together. Well, a good enough amount of them to try to get this final incriminating evidence against them. Right. So what happens after that now?
Recon. So after that, they're still not interested in doing anything. Nobody has
not surprising
plan. No one's
at all.
Trying to do anything. And we actually have text messages from Adam Fox, the homeless man, to Dan Chappell, where Adam, because he's such a sweet guy, like if he's guilty of anything, it's being too naive and like too trusting of people. You know, he really looked up to Dan and thought this was his friend. There's text messages from him in September saying to Dan, I don't think we should do, the plan. Let's put the plan on the back burner. Why don't we go with Ty's bug out plan instead? Ty Garbin said, oh, why don't we just if something bad happens after the election, let's just bug out at my property. So that was what Adam wanted to do. And you could tell when you read the text message, you can see that he feels bad. Like he feels like he's disappointing Dan or letting him down. And he feels super bad about it. But you can tell it's not his plan. He's saying to Dan, I don't think we should do the plan, but there isn't a plan anyways. It's just what he thinks is talk, because Dan told him, oh, when I was in the military and we wanted to train guys and get them focused, we had to train them for a specific mission. Oh, it's not real. It's just to get them focused. So that's what Adam, he doesn't really think any of it's real, but in the event it is, he's saying to Dan, let's hold off on that plan and just bug out with at Ty's, place or whatever. That's in September. So the FBI wanting to round these guys up. Oh, I should add that at this FTX, the Luther FTX, before they did their little nighttime recon, the FBI called a circle of trust meeting where their informants invited certain people to come and stand in this circle, and their undercover agent, Tim Bates, plays a video of that the FBI actually produced of them exploding an SUV. So the FBI actually blew up an SUV and filmed it so they could try to offer explosives to these men. So undercover agent Tim Bates is introduced as a explosives expert, and he says, "Oh, check out this video. I can get you guys explosives." Now, there's, again, these informants and agents are wearing wires. If any of these guys were like, "Hey, I want to buy the explosives," you would know, you would hear it. They said that Barry reacted excitedly. Oh, he was excited by the video, and he just had
every man loves watching a van blow up. Every man.
It's
like, what?
So silly. Like, okay, well, why are you making this stuff though? Like, again, this isn't them
right
to somebody saying, "Hey, I want to get explosives." It's like you are offering it to them and trying to make it look cool and make it look easily available. And so he's telling them he can get them like $4,000 of explosives. Nobody gives this guy money. Nobody is trying or wanting to purchase explosives from him. No. Right. So here we fast forward to October. There was going to be another FTX that was supposed to happen in October, but it ended up not happening because October 7th, they decided to lure these guys to their arrest. Some of them were arrested at different locations, but the main group of them, they told them they were going to go get like free gear from Red. So they said, "Oh, he's got like surplus, like training gear, like militia stuff. So extra magazines, some extra plate carriers." So they made the incentive for these guys thinking they're getting free stuff that, again, cost money that people would want to just to get them in the vehicles to go to this trip to be arrested. And you're going to find out that there was some setting up that was done where they were trying to like get these guys killed, in my opinion. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah. You can I
can imagine. I can't wait to watch this documentary. Oh my goodness. It's so much bigger than this kidnapping. I mean, it is, and it's so important. I mean, I am blown away. I can see it. It's not just these guys. I mean, I really want them to get the help that they need, but it's about the infestation of the FBI and the corruption at the level that they have, that they are just doing whatever they want, and they are free to do whatever they want, seemingly. I mean, and I'm sure the Biden administration, it's only gotten worse since he took over. Talk about political weaponization. I mean, geez, the DOJ right now, holy cow.
And the fact that these agents haven't been like punished, they're still Jason Chambers.
Of course not. Of course
working
not.
For the FBI, I'm sure. Impala still works for the FBI, so nobody's been punished. No one's been held accountable. That is sad.
Well, no, they did their jobs great. They all got promoted. I'm sure they all got bonuses. Exactly. Like this is they did exactly what they needed to do for this. I mean, it still was used as Trump is inciting these people. I mean, fast forward January 6th, it was, look what was already, we thwarted, right? We thwarted that kidnapping and assassination attempt for a governor. Now look at him inciting, even though he was asking everyone to go home. I was there that day. I listened to him. It was the first and only time I had seen him I was living nearby. I had to go. I'm like, of course I'm going to drive down to the Capitol, right? And I distinctly remember him saying, "We're going to peacefully walk down to the Capitol after this and protest, as is an American's right." And I'm like, yeah. And that makes sense. And the crowd that I was with, I went down to the Capitol as well. I was standing in that crowd looking at the Capitol, and I didn't see any violence I just saw a bunch of people standing in front of the Capitol. Like, that's all I saw. So,
Wow.
I mean, man, I feel like if we keep going, it's going to be, we can talk for, I mean, I want to
Oh
grill
yeah, it would be
your
10
brain.
hours.
You're obviously so in tune and so well informed about all of this. It's incredible. I just want to say thank you for joining me, and I want to remind everybody
Thank you.
who's watching right now to go help fund this film. This film is not funded, obviously, fully funded. I really want this to be a thing. This needs to be seen. Americans need to see this. They need to understand. I feel like a lot of you probably know the extent of the corruption. Maybe not, actually, because I wasn't aware of this, and I feel like I am constantly taking in information about all this stuff so I can talk about it. I run a show, so this
Exactly.
is
Like you do this for
it's
a
incredible.
living.
Exactly, right. So imagine what the average citizen, they don't know, right? They have no idea.
Exactly.
Oh, and it was an FBI plot. That's all I kind of thought, right? Like, oh, they tried to do that. Like, wow, not really surprising. And it's like, but wow, how much worse it actually is. So where are you in the funding, and what is your timeline right now currently?
We are, after we released our second trailer there,
Yep.
we are close to being halfway funded. So
Okay.
we need to meet our full funding goal. Unfortunately, I'll just give some background on like how the documentary came about and like its process. I
Yep.
interviewed Brandon after he was acquitted, and just from my interview with him as a journalist who reported on the case every single day, who read the court filings, there was so much I didn't know. I felt we needed to make a documentary. So I had interviewed him, used that interview to cut my first trailer, which we actually put out last year. It's a different trailer, not as well done as this one, but we used that to fundraise, and I was able to raise like $28,000. I used that to make multiple trips to Michigan to interview these men, their families, but I also had to interview other people. Like I had to do 20 interviews across 8 different states because they had all these different targets in these different locations, or people who attended an event that you don't know about. You never heard about them because they weren't one of the people charged. They were just told, oh, you could be charged, if you talk about it. So there's
AKA shut your mouth.
It's a much bigger than people understand, and it's a lot of work to tell this story. It requires a lot of resources. Since we did that, we cut our second trailer that shows people the number one, how much we've improved since we put out our first trailer, but it also shows everybody where that funding has gone, what we were able to do with such a small amount of money, and the quality at which we're trying to compete at the industry level with like what you would see on like Netflix or HBO. That's where we're aiming. So right now we're about close to being halfway funded. We need to meet that full funding goal to meet our post-production needs, to hire, I need to pay my editor full-time for a few months so he can work on this. He has a full-time job and a family. He has put his own money and time into this for over a year. So I have to get him taken care of. I'd like to hire him an assistant. We need to license archive news footage. I foresee potential lawfare with that. I need to make sure everything is, double, triple checked. And then the story itself is so massive that we go, from the PatCon days and the 90s of the FBI stuff, we bring it forward to 2018, where there may have been an FBI operation to infiltrate the Midwest militia movement. Then we bring it forward to what was happening in 2020 and all of this stuff. And then, of course, where we're at today, because these cases aren't over. Many people think that because half of these men were acquitted, that they think all of them were, or they think that, this was exposed. They don't know that, like, there are still 5 men in prison. 2 of them are in Florence Supermax with El Chapo, and like the worst of the worst. They're in 23-hour-a-day lockdown. Imagine what that's like. They're prevented from making phone calls and for communicating with people, including their families. If you put, like I put money on their commissary, that money is being seized by the BOP. They won't give it to them, and they haven't refunded me. So they do things like this to make it very difficult and to punish these men I believe they put them in supermaxes because they were participating in my documentary. I was interviewing them at Nuevo County. And so I got a statement of Barry for the weaponization committee, and I published it. And the next day, they moved Adam and Barry to supermax facilities across the country. Now, for the state guys, the 3 who were charged for providing material support, they were not even charged at the federal level. But on the eve of their appeals, they were all 3 moved to federal BOP facilities across the country. So they had no access to a Michigan law library to prepare for their appeal. They couldn't communicate with their lawyers. Their lawyers couldn't easily visit them. Their families couldn't visit them. The lawyers, when they would call, their phone calls were being monitored by a third party. We know who that is. 11 months after their appeal was supposed to start, only 2 of them have been brought back to Michigan. They're currently being held right now in Jackson County. I'm very concerned for them and for their ability to have a fair appeal. The person overseeing their appeals, the person who oversaw their first trial, Judge Wilson, why on earth would he rule against himself? Like, none of this makes sense. And then of course, Whitmer is the head of the MDOC there. So they're sort of in her hands right now, these guys in Jackson County. That is scary to me.
Strangling them, basically.
She's an evil person. So is Dana Nassel. And really, she should be facing charges for being a co-conspirator.
Wow. I have so many more questions, but I have to read some super chats. I like to do about an hour.
Sorry.
Oh no,
that was not going to happen with this story.
No. Don't worry about it. There was no way I was gonna. I needed to hear it. You know what I mean? It was such an incredible story, and thank you for sharing as much as you did. I feel like you gave us, the cliff notes. Like, we got to see just a portion of what you have and what to look forward to with this documentary. I saw so many people in chat that were like, I want to watch this doc. I can't wait to watch this documentary. Hopefully people talk about it. Hopefully you guys share the link, which is in the description below. You can follow her on X also. And the link to the website for the documentary is in the description. So please share it. And I'm going to reach out to anyone I know. I have a lot of people in my peer group that have way bigger platforms than me. And I feel like this is something that needs to get so many more eyes on it. That's why when I saw the trailer, I'm like, I need to hear more. I need to know more about this, because it was obvious that there was so many things that I was missing from what I knew about this. Just like you were saying, right? Most people thought once those guys were acquitted, I was one of them. I was like, oh, good. I'm glad these guys that are free of that bullshit. Like, I had no idea there were still 5 more people. So I'm gonna reach out. I know some people at Blaze TV. I know some people in I was gonna say Tenet Media, but that's a whole that's no longer a thing, I guess. But I know the people that the victims that were a part of that. But anyway, I mean, I'm just gonna do what I can. I really just want to get as many eyes as possible on this and help you get this documentary out. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Let's see here. Drowning Clown, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. I appreciate that. The Squid for $10 says, the entire plot is basically a Mr. Big Sting. If you don't know, a Mr. Big Sting comes from Canada, when cops would develop relationships with people and convince them to commit crimes. Right. That's entrapment, right? I mean, classic, just that's what that is. Mr. Squiggles for 5 says, yes, Radix. I love her. She's awesome. One of the people that were excited about you coming on. Lord of the Ree for 1 says, friendly reminder that the state is effectively a multinational corporation with a monopoly on the use of force. Adam, just curious if you started reading Anatomy of the State yet. God bless y'all. You know, I'll be honest. It's been sitting right next to me, and I have a 6-week-old that has full control of my life right now. And I don't remember the last time I sat down to read anything. I read a little bit of a book. I think it's next to my bed. I got one of Razor Fist's book, and I was reading it out loud to him. But man, he's been crying a lot, and I think it's just like he's getting backed up. He's breastfeeding, so I think he's growing a lot, so he's eating more, and then but then his belly's like getting backed up, and he's just he's in that stage. So I haven't slept.
I
I haven't
remember
slept
that.
a lot. Yeah.
I remember
Okay.
that age. You're not going to sleep a lot for the next year.
So
Get used to it.
Yeah. So
but it's worth
I'm
it.
tired. Absolutely. I love him. I'm so grateful. He's amazing. He's healthy, and I just love him so much. So I'm not upset, but I will get to it. Ree actually bought me this book about a month ago. So
I love that name, by the way. I don't know if you know this, but I always go Ree. Like I do that at the end of all my videos, like a psycho. Yeah, I just like to really scare people and blow out their eardrums at the end. You got to do the high pitched Ree. So
I just want to let you know
username.
there were multiple people in chat that were like, "Man, I could listen to this all night long," and then they were discussing amongst us. So like, she should have a podcast, and I'm like, I should let her know that people are discussing that. So just putting that out there that people are interested. Interesting. Diving in. Obviously, you have an ability. You're a journalist. You obviously have an ability to dig up what you need to uncover the truth. So people are desperate for that nowadays. I feel like too many people are trying to hide the truth. So
definitely.
And I got one more here from Meatwad for 10. Says during a nooner, Nerdrotic claimed that Koof was not over. I'm sorry, but he's completely clueless. Koof is over, and most of society is back to normal. Gary should learn to move on from a dead horse. Well, he also thought that Stargate was a trash movie, so he obviously has some things that he's wrong about. All right, so everyone gets a few, right? Everyone could be wrong about some. Some people are
to us all
more wrong than others, but that's all right. But please do me a favor, everyone here, if you haven't already, go check this out. Go check out the website. It has all the information. It's got all the stuff. You could support here. You could follow everyone involved. You could read more about it. I feel like we got a really great crash course on the documentary today, and it's been fantastic. But please share it. I think this is so important. I'm going to share it as much as possible. I'm going to try. I normally don't clip up my interviews, but I think it's important enough that I should clip this up and just try to, because there's certain things that you expose that I'm like, wow, I'm just so bewildered that it wasn't talked about more, even in my circles. Like the people that I follow tend to be the ones that are like, check this out, and this just needs to be talked about. So I'm grateful that you're doing this work, and I'm looking forward to watching what you create with this documentary.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And honestly, anytime you want to come back, you just let me know and be like, hey, we got a new trailer. I got some new information, or whatever.
Anytime we get some kind of news on this, or I get closer to letting people know, like if we have a better idea of like when this is going to be released, once we get the funding, that helps me. If I know I can pay certain people and hire certain people, I'll be able to estimate when we can get it out quicker. I want to tell people, make sure that you are following the documentary X account. It is K&K Film. So just kind of like the website you brought up, exactly like that, you can find it on X. So any information about the documentary goes up there, but we also sometimes put out little small snippets. Like I've been putting up the statements. We interviewed everybody and we got statements for the weaponization committee from them. So we put it up on there sometimes. So that's a good account to follow just specifically for information on this. You can follow me on X. I'm at @Radix on X. And I talk about the case a lot on my personal account. And I would encourage people also to bookmark the website for the documentary, knkfilm.com. You can always, on that front page, you'll be able to watch that trailer. We have our donation links there on that website, knkfilm.com/donate. That will take you to our Give, Send, Go fundraiser. You can donate and support us that way. And just bookmark that website. We also will be up we have a page on there that's like contact the guys or help the guys. That's ways for people to write to them. I need to update, then change the address because they keep getting moved around. So you can find Adam and Barry's, though. They're at both at Floor and Supermax. If anyone wants to write them a letter, I know that they love to get letters. That's something that helps them. One of the families has a Give, Send, Go set up because they have to spend so much money on prison fees. Yeah, so right here you see the mailing addresses to these guys. And so if you want to write,
would they
to
even
them,
give them the
something
letters?
you can do for free.
Would they
so
even give it to
them?
them?
That's one thing we don't know. They haven't been getting them, and I don't know if people just aren't writing or if they're like confiscating them, because sometimes I send them letters and they don't get them. I had to start scanning every letter I sent because to track like which ones they're getting and which they aren't getting.
Right.
So it's like they didn't get my cards for like Adam didn't get his birthday card, or he'll get one letter and then not the other. It's so weird how they do things. So we don't even know if they're going to get it, but it's something you can do. It doesn't cost really money to send a letter. You know, you spend money on the postage and that's it. And if they get it, it helps them, and it's good for them to hear from people. It helps keep their spirits up because these guys are in a really dark place right now. And
sure.
I ask that people pray for them too and their families.
There it is. Well, thank you again, Christina. This has been excellent and eye-opening, and I just want to help as much as possible. So I'll be in contact with you because I am really going to reach out to as many people as I can to try to get more light on this. So
thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Of course. So have a great night, and everyone, thank you for watching. And I will be back, of course, tomorrow night. It is Friday, and I'll be doing a jam night as usual. I've been writing a few things. I might have completed a song that you may or may not have known about, but I will tease you tomorrow with maybe more of that information, but we'll see. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Please go support this documentary. I know you guys know how important it is. I don't have to tell you. So I appreciate you all. You guys are all fantastic. Have a great night. Good night.